When you move towards the active stage of labour, this is the point where your labour is really beginning to progress now, probably between 4 and 10 centimetres of dilation, but again you might not know that straight away. This is the point where most people move towards the location where they're going to give birth. If you're planning a home birth, it's the point where your midwives might arrive. If you're planning to have your baby in a hospital, it's when you're probably going to make that journey to hospital. So this can be the phase of labour where things change a little bit and you're quite likely to experience a little bit of a wobbly moment. That's just the adrenaline talking. You're going to feel that heart begin to pound a little bit, that breathing getting shallower. We know how to deal with that. We're going to focus on that basic birth breath. In for the count of 4 and out for the count of 8. It's really worth teaching your birthing partner these breathing techniques as well, because they can help you use them during your labour. When you're in the active stage of labour, the contractions will be the same strength and increase in duration as your labour progresses. You're probably going to be less chatty, and some people feel a little bit sick. You might not be able to talk through contractions anymore. It's completely normal. It really helps to use a little bit of movement during this phase of labour. A lot of people think about moving. We talked when we were talking about how the cervix dilates, about how some people choose to rock from side to side. Some people rotate their pelvis to increase the speed of their dilation. The most important thing is to listen to your body and do whatever feels right. If it feels right during your labour, it's the right kind of movement for your body. Absolutely imperative to follow your gut instincts. Some people like to be really upright during the active phase of labour, and you can do this by sitting on a birthing ball, maybe leaning over the back of a chair. You can do it by leaning over your birth partner. Some people like to use water during their labour, and it's when you get towards this active phase of labour where contractions are increasing in strength and duration that you might want to think about moving towards the birth pool if that's what you're planning to use. The active phase of labour continues until you're nearly fully dilated, and then you get to a point of labour that we call transition. Transition is very much a gear change. A lot of people really worry about this phase of labour because you may kind of experience some fairly strong emotions in this phase. The important thing to remember is this is, again, just down to the interplay of all these hormones that we're producing. During the transitional phase, contractions change from being opening contractions that are drawing up the fibres of the cervix to expelling contractions. Your uterus will start to contract and bear down to help guide your baby out of your body. When you're in the active phase of labour, approaching transition, your midwife will probably want to examine you every 4 hours that you're in labour, and will be looking for your labour to progress. Generally, midwives are looking to see that you're dilating 2 centimetres for every 4 hours of labour. But again, remember the stacking cups, and this can vary from person to person. It's really important to try not to get hung up on measurements. It's really worth trying to rest in between contractions. This phase of labour can go on for some time. And it's really important that your birthing partner tries to maintain that perfect birthing environment. Think about that lovely bubble or nest we spoke about in the first video, or how to recreate an environment that feels like a romantic hotel room. Your birthing partner should consider this their role. It's really lovely if they think about how to change the lighting in the room. A lot of the time hospital rooms are lit with fluorescent lighting. Probably a little bit too bright, and that's going to trigger the release of the adrenaline and reduce the flow of oxytocin. So it's absolutely fine to change the lighting in a room. All of the birthing rooms at Ipswich Hospital have low lighting as well, so your birth partner could think about that. You want to make sure that the room's not too hot or too cold. It's absolutely fine to open a window or ask for a fan during your labour. Your midwife might suggest closing the windows or warming the environment up when your baby is about to be born. It's also fine to use different smells from home. So some people like to use lots of different essential oils or things that change the smell of a room. You can speak to people in a variety of health food shops that will be able to advise you on different aromatherapy oils that you might want to use. And it's quite important, again, to check that you like the smell of those before you start using them during labour. There's nothing worse than being surrounded by a strong smell that you actually find you dislike. You can also just take things from home. really simple way of changing the birthing environment. Some people like to have their own pillows or something else like their own clothes and things like that from home as well, to make sure that they feel really comfortable. It's also worth thinking about what you want to wear during your labour. One of the other things that triggers the release of adrenaline is feeling overexposed or over-observed. So you probably want to wear something fairly light because you're likely to get quite warm, but something that covers your bottom and is fairly long. So a long old t-shirt or something like that might work really, really well. But again, practice and think about all of these things during your labour. When you reach the transitional phase, you will find that you feel a little bit different. Some people can feel quite overwhelmed, and that's just this surge of hormones that's taking you into the next stage of labour. If you've worked really well all the way through your labour, you felt quite empowered, you felt as though you're coping brilliantly, and then suddenly something changes, that's one of the early signals that you're reaching this transitional phase. I always think it's worth trying to really breathe your way slowly and rhythmically through 2 or 3 contractions at this point, and you can quite often find that your emotional state changes completely by the time that you've done that with your partner. So again, we're going to focus really, really hard on using that long, slow breathing technique where we're breathing in for 4 and out for the count of 8. Some people find they're able to use that all the way through their labour, or sometimes they switch to a more sort of rhythmic breathing technique when they get to the longer contractions. Again, absolutely fine to be guided by whatever your body tells you to do.